Hello and welcome back to the Self-Wealth Real Estate Podcast. Today I'm interviewing Erin and Heather. Now, Erin and Heather jointly run Pink Wall Designs, and they are a design company that specializes in designing Airbnbs and boutique hotels and motels. So it's kind of a unique perspective, but we talk about why design is so important. They give us lots of tips for it. And as you guys may know, I am currently working on rebuilding, heavily renovating a boutique motel in Ontario. And so we talk about some tips that I can use there, and I learned some things that will be useful for my design. They are helping me with some of the design on that, so I'm really excited to turn that into like a unique experience. They talk about how design can make such a difference in bookings and in the overnight rates and in marketing. And I completely agree. I think doing design at a high standard in hospitality makes a huge difference. So they give us tons of tips. They have excellent insight. I think you guys will learn a lot from this if you're interested in this space. So listen up, and thanks for listening again. Welcome, Erin and Heather.
Thanks so much for having us.
So tell me a bit about your backgrounds before you guys got into Pink Wall Designs. What were you doing before?
Yeah, I'll kick us off. So my background was actually into the real estate investing world. Me and my husband, we jumped in. We did single family home conversions into multi-units. We dabbled into flips, and then just with like transitions in markets. Like every investors, we ended up transitioning into cross-border and doing Airbnbs. So all in that, I'm also a real estate agent. So I kind of have that whole wealth of knowledge on that transaction side also. So kind of a big mix on that end. And then Heather and I transitioned together into design. But everything I learned throughout the investing, staging, designing, all kind of incorporates into what we do now with our business.
Yeah, and similar to me as well, like flipped some of our, first homes that we ever lived in, and kind of did every part of the, like, bought it ourselves, did the upgrades, design, staged, sold, blah, blah, blah. So we kind of got, a feeling of the whole process of like real estate investing. And then, I learned that I loved the design part, got one of my own Airbnbs, and just it naturally sort of flowed into like, okay, I think we've found what we're good at kind of thing, met Erin, and then now we've been doing this full-time and professionally for a while now.
Nice. And so your experience before you guys kind of got into what you guys do now in designing, I guess you guys were talking about flips and things like that. How have you found kind of the design changes when you're selling those, when you're showing a home, that kind of thing?
Yeah, like in comparison to what we do now, like we are strictly Airbnb, boutique hotels, bringing that like, destination to the properties. It's much different than a residential home. And that's what we preach to our clients who are investors. So I think that would be like a big difference. We're designing with uniqueness and a guest target in mind, and not so much of like what you personally like for something to live at personally.
It's similar to like, preparing your favorite meal. You can, for your family, throw it in a bowl and like throw it on a table, and nobody cares what it looks like because they know how it tastes and it's for your family and whatever. But if you were to sell that, you have to think about the packaging, how you're going to sell it, who, at like the price of it, well, like all of that, right? How are you getting that in front of people? Totally different business model and ultimately result.
Absolutely, yeah. And you do see a lot of flips, and most of mine, as you guys know, I've flipped quite a few houses. They're pretty cookie cutter. We have a standard kind of, we repeat, every house needs different stuff. So there is some changes here and there, or there's different kind of levels, but we repeat the same design a lot. But I do enjoy occasionally making a house different and unique. Like most of our houses, you're trying to aim for the broadest kind of audience. So you don't want to go too wild. And I've seen some stuff, like recently I saw you guys post about like one of the rooms you wallpapered the ceiling, which looked so cool. One of the flips I did earlier this year, I had found in another house National Geographic magazines from one flip from like the late 70s and early 80s, I believe. And cut out pages of it and made wallpaper as for a powder room behind the mirror in the toilet, like the whole wall, and covered it with like these bright but vintage National Geographic pictures of cool stuff, and definitely unique. And the feedback was mixed. Most people loved it, but it was just in most flips you don't see something, you know, unique, and you see pretty standard, right? Stagers use the same furniture. A lot of people are buying from the same places, so a lot of stuff same standard, and I kind of took a risk on that, and I don't always do that. I do think it helped. So I like the unique stuff. I think you have to be careful on flips to not go overboard, and sometimes I play around. That was a test to see how certain things would go. But yeah, I do think even on flips, because they can be so cookie cutter, being able to design better can make such a difference. And I think that carries on into everything, you know, I do in real estate. Sometimes for the same cost or almost the same cost, you can design a rental, the decor, like the finish is just a little bit better, just picking, you know, the tile choices and things like that for minimal extra cost, or even just picking how you lay it can make such a difference. And it doesn't have to cost much more. And so a rental, you can make a difference like that. And flips for sure. So I see that, but then obviously it's a little bit different when somebody's looking for a place to book for a night or a few nights or a week. And I know personally, when I'm looking to travel, I'm not necessarily looking to stay in a house that looks just like my home. I want to stay somewhere different. You want a little bit of an experience. It's fun. You're on vacation, right? Or traveling or whatever. So tell me what it is you guys do now.
So literally what you just said, we design experiences for travelers and for people who are on vacation. And, you know, we're in hospitality interior design. That's what Pink Wall Designs is. So exactly. And kind of what was the deal sealer to that as well was Airbnb did a survey. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago now. And it was just like, when you're booking something, are you looking for something that looks like your house, or are you looking for something that is different? And like 97% of people said something like different and fun, because exactly, you are on vacation. You need a break from your regular life, right? That's why people travel. So, you know, why would we be going after the exact same design that everyone else has? That's what people fear, right? Like they're like, I want to just do something generic because like I don't want to like niche too much. But then if everyone does that, then everyone has just all these generic properties. So we are in the business of empowering our clients to stand out, go bold, you know, and that doesn't mean that your whole house is like neon orange. It just means like take a risk. Like that's a really cool idea that you did, the National Geographic wallpaper, like very interesting, right? And lots of people would appreciate that. So we're just in the business of like empowering our client, you know, getting them out of their shell and taking a risk and ultimately making the money. Because when you do that, the ROI is inevitable. And I think people are afraid, but once they do it, they see and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I need to do this more often because the money is coming.
Yeah. And I think some people sometimes struggle paying for design, which I think is a mistake. I mean, I stage almost all of my flips, right? Because the house looks better staged. And somehow people, you know, I'm paying, let's say $3,000 to stage a house or something like that. It adds way more value than that. And yet they don't actually own the furniture, the buyers, right? They're not getting that furniture. It doesn't change the underlying part of the house, but it makes it feel like a more expensive house. So you put expensive items to a house, even if they're not keeping them, it feels better. Let alone, of course, if they're staying and enjoying that experience, both the aesthetics of it, but like you said, the experience you guys are creating. So I really like that. I've been following you guys on Instagram for a while. What's your Instagram handle?
Pink Wall Designs.
Nice and simple.
With an S. Yeah.
Designs with an S. Perfect. I've been following you guys for a while. And, you know, previously I had several Airbnb cottages. I don't anymore. And instead bought a rundown motel in kind of the middle of nowhere, Ontario. Probably 3 hours from Toronto, 2 hours from Ottawa. So my goal there is to turn it into a destination. The design needs to be absolutely top notch because nobody's driving through the small town of Denby, Ontario, just looking for a place to stay. Especially, you know, I'm hoping I can charge pretty good rates for it as well. So the key will be making it so appealing that people actually drive to Denby that they've never heard of to stay at our boutique motel, which will be kind of 15 or 16 rooms, working on the second phase of design right now. It's going to be a big reno. It's going to take me a year to get there. So that's what you guys are doing. I've seen, obviously a lot of Airbnbs, but you guys are also doing design for motels, boutique motels and hotels. Can you tell us a bit, why would somebody want to get into doing boutique hotels and motels instead of just buying an Airbnb or a property to Airbnb?
Where are you going to go ahead?
Yeah, we can both jump in. I think just like the natural progression of investors, everybody's always looking for like that next thing, like what's working. And as you grow with your own portfolio, it literally makes sense. Like we're coming into a time where these boutique hotels are owned, by older generations. They're getting ready to offload, and it makes sense to buy an asset that you can have multiple doors when you're already doing that. If you're juggling multiple Airbnbs, like each one of those are its own entity. Whereas if you get a boutique hotel, you can have that one business model and then do that rinse and repeat in all the rooms, and then you have multiple doors. So we are fully on board with it. Like we're involved in doing like some consulting and then also on another boutique hotel ourselves. So we're seeing it more as like a trend. And I think it's just going to develop and be a great investment.
And people want, like travelers want that experience too, right? Because sometimes, it's just two of you and you don't need a 5-bedroom Airbnb, but you want that similar experience and like that same location to, the stuff that you want to go see and like amenities and stuff. So why not do a boutique hotel versus, because even a traditional hotel, like people really don't like to stay there anymore. It's all bed. There's maybe a fridge if you're lucky, and that's it. There's no balcony. Not in Canada anyway. It's illegal to have the windows open, right? Like most, and in the States too. And it's just not really an experience anymore. I think it's just all that's out there right now. And I think we're going to see a massive change, as Erin just said, over the next like probably 5 to 10 years, because people like us are buying them, designing them, and really creating that experience. And back to your question about why an investor would move in that direction also is like the zoning is a boutique hotel is going to be zoned either commercial, hospitality, whatever it is in that general area. So you're not faced with like a restriction change overnight and then boom, your business doesn't work anymore, which is what's happened with a lot of people with Airbnbs, as we've seen in North America over the last couple of years. So it's definitely a little bit safer on that side of things. Definitely a bigger investment, but probably a nicer ROI with certain deals as well, because, maybe it's a higher purchase price. But if you've got 18 doors, then, you're charging a decent rate, and it's more of an overall kind of business versus like just more transactional. You're staying to sleep and then you're going, so.
Mm-hmm. And it's easier to manage, 18 doors in one place rather than even 5 separate Airbnbs in different locations, right?
And sometimes it makes sense to have like an on-site staff member in that case, whereas that's the ideal scenario if you have somebody there all the time, right?
Yes, absolutely. We're still toying on ours, whether we're going to have someone full-time or just someone kind of local who will, obviously 15, 16 rooms will be a lot of cleaning to do. And but we are
doing hybrid models, like they're having somebody there between, 9 and 5, and then at night they go home or whatever. That's like seems to be where people are starting off with. And then that's nice for your guests too, because then they can say, okay, at least like if something happens at 11 p.m., okay, well, someone will be here tomorrow at 9. So like sometimes it can wait. Mm-hmm. That sort of hybrid model is nice. And we're seeing a lot of people do that.
Yeah. And I want to set it up in part because it is a more rural area. So there's less of a labor pool to pull from. I want to set it up where there's, we don't need someone on site for a lot of it. So, like the Airbnb model in some ways with self check-in, and we don't need someone to meet you at the counter is what I'm hoping for, but having someone available in case anything goes wrong or in case people need help with anything, someone local will be helpful to have for sure.
That's also where like times have changed, right? Like technology is insane. The older generations, they would always have someone at the front desk, whereas now self check-in just makes sense. And then the other thing to add too is you're going to have more opportunities, like depending on location, you can also open into getting into like events and spaces. Like does your place have a venue that, you're hosting and holding way more people? So it's not just, families or guests coming and going. You can actually have fully booked weekends with like weddings and that kind of thing too. So just really thinking outside the box would be, like elevating that space.
Yeah. Kind of self-serving question because I'm doing it, but I'm curious your viewpoint. In mine, I'm trying to do a common area. So there's like an area for activities where anyone can use. So it's not just using their rooms. So there'll be outside activities, of course, but then there's like inside areas we're setting up. Do you see that common in these hotels and motels, or is that something you see, or what do you think of that?
I think most investors want that. So if the space permits, they are definitely utilizing an area like that. Not all properties are set up with something like that. Maybe there's an opportunity to sometimes like build out a little place like that, but then you don't want to take away from like occupancy and whatnot. So I think if your property already has that, or if it makes sense to like even build a small little communal area, most people from what we have been seeing want to utilize that and want to, it's just an easy amenity for your guests. Like it doesn't really take much. And it's just like somewhere where they can leave their room, as you said, or like meet a person for like a coffee or whatever, or just like get some air and work even or whatever. So it's a very easy, low investment space to offer to your guests. And so I think everyone wants to take advantage if they can.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, that one it's going to be fun designing the common area for that one, seeing how that turns out. So you talked about, designing for an experience in order to stand out. How do you find that helps, and what difference does it make, having an Airbnb or a hotel that's designed by you guys versus, someone kind of doing themselves? And
it's everything. It's going to make or break what your property makes, who knows about it. It's social media presence. Like it's literally everything. If you just pick up a hotel and decide to design it by yourself and you're not really thinking about your end user and you just pick what you think is nice, like it may look decent, but like when's the last time you filmed like a courtyard Marriott room? Like I think I've avoided that if I've ever stayed one. I'm like, okay, let's get out of the room and then we'll do our videos. Honest to God. Like we're in a digital age, a social media age. That's how people advertise. You're not buying a billboard anymore. You're not taking out a commercial spot on TV. Your advertising is social media. And that's where you have to put your hotel to get eyes on it and to get people through the door and heads in beds. So it must coincide with what people are looking for on the user experience end. And so that is, people want to take photos, people want to take videos, people want to post, people want to tell their friends, oh my God, I'm at this like amazing boutique hotel in like 3 hours from Toronto, right? They want to create those memories. They want to create a travel reel. People want to take trips. People want to take extravagant trips. And some people can't afford to go to like Europe for 3 weeks. So how can we provide that to more of a local audience in places like Northern Ontario or like, Michigan or whatever? Like we do a lot of work in a lot of those areas. So that's basically how you have to think about it. And then the difference is everything. So it's like, okay, if you're wanting to make your hotel an experience, well, what's around? Like who's going there? You have to first identify all of that stuff and then you work backwards. And then once you know that avatar, then you design for that person. And same with all of your amenities and your common rooms and everything. And then boom, all of a sudden you get these people seeing your place online and they're like, I want to go here. It's so cool. I want to go here. Right. And then that's how you get your, your guests to do your marketing for you, but B, that's how you get, the word of mouth going about your property. And so to ignore that is like shooting yourself in the foot. And like, I would not recommend you moving forward with a boutique hotel if you're not going to get it properly designed for marketing purposes.
Yeah. And just to add on to that too, like our background from what we have in our knowledge bank, we are investors, right? So we come from that investor mindset. We always know that we're designing for our end user in mind. And then we also do like background research as well. So we have a couple things that we always say, and this goes for boutique hotels as well as like Airbnbs as well, is like appealing to everybody is appealing to no one. So the things that you don't want to do is look exactly like everybody else's Airbnbs or boutique hotels that do look okay. You want to stand out and you want to be different, but still have, you know, the market research to be like, what does do well in this area and why are these amenities that we need in our property? So there's a lot that goes into like the thought process of how we design and why. And I think that's just like developed over creating our brand and our business. And it took doing our own properties to realize this. And this is what's working these days.
Nice. What I see in Ontario is like when I think of these motels, and I don't even think of them as boutique motels, I think of those older roadside motels. They kind of see along the highways and stuff. A lot of them are dying. You sometimes drive down and there's just rotting ones on the side of the road. You know, nobody's been using them. Often if they're too small too, they were never big enough to kind of sustain someone living there full time and managing them. And so I guess what I'm seeing here is a bit of the revitalization of those into boutique motels. And you still see those as roadside motels. There's a place for them. They're usually seen as like the cheapest place to stay. And then there's this whole other side where now when you go the boutique motel side, they're no longer the cheapest place to stay. And I think the price difference that you can charge between that kind of, even if you were to give the facelift traditional style and, you know, simple design, but refreshed on the roadside motel versus doing a boutique motel style, I think both of them renovated, the price difference is still quite staggering. Because as you said, from the investor side, it can feel like wasteful. Why am I paying for wallpaper? How much is this tile? You know, I can get this, I don't know, 4x12 subway tile at Home Depot for $3 a foot. And yet the price difference that you get for that a little bit extra on the design can be, I mean, you can, for 2 renovated places, you can double your rate over your nightly rate for just the design choices.
And honestly, just to like speak on what you said there, we're literally, for the most part, paying the same for what you would for a refresh anyway. Like, because we're investors first, we're not these like, you know, interior designers that are just losing their mind on like, oh, get this beautiful light and get this beautiful couch. Like, no, we're like, okay, is this worth it? Like when we shop for wallpaper, and also it helps that we get trade discounts everywhere too. But when we shop for wallpaper, like, we're not going crazy. Like, we mostly start in the clearance section. Is there something that we can use there? And most of the time that there is, and then we kind of move from there. So like, we're kind of spending almost the same. The only time where we might be spending a little bit more is going a bit extra with accessories and whatnot. But if you're talking like bare bones, to paint a wall white, okay, is going to be cheap. But like to paint it blue is the same labor. The paint probably costs the same, right? It's just about how you're utilizing it. So it's really not that much more in budget if you're really thinking about it.
Yeah.
So it's just you being strategic.
I think that's also like the difference between just like a standard interior designer and us. Like, we know where to spend the budget and where not to. Like, there's higher ticket end items that you do need to spend money to be realistic, right? Like, you don't want to always be refreshing and like buying new bed frames because that's annoying and that's just taking more like logistics away. So you're going to buy a quality bed, but we're also don't have to like break the bank when we're shopping for those items. So yeah, I think that there's a difference between the two.
Well, with your experience, I'd love some tips for our listeners who are maybe designing and either an Airbnb or, you know, they're thinking of a boutique motel. How would you guys tackle that? What would you guys suggest? Can you give us some tips? Let's say take a blank slate roadside motel. Everything's in good shape, but it's empty. You're starting from scratch. How would you go about, or what are some tips that you guys would say that would help our listeners out the most?
I would definitely play with paint and like Heather's saying, like these feature walls with wallpaper, incorporating that. And it doesn't have to be all walls, right? It could just be one wall. It could be the ceiling. So that's kind of a go-to for us, as well as certain items. Like, you can buy a really quality high-end mattress, but now there's quality ones that you can buy off of Amazon that come nicely like wrapped up in a box. So that's convenient too, which only end up being a couple $100 rather than a couple thousand. So those are kind of two good tips that we always implement in our properties.
Rugs and lighting are also huge. Like everybody sleeps on lighting all the time. Like we see it so often. And it's like you have to put a light in the property. Like there's no going around it. So make it nice. Utilize it. Make it a statement. It doesn't have to be like this crazy like chandelier, but like don't put a boob light in. Like if, you know what I mean? Very simple. There's tons. You could go on Home Depot, Amazon, Wayfair there and literally filter to like under $100. There are tons of perfectly nice, great lights for under $100. Like there's almost no excuse as to why you're putting in a bad light in your property. So that is something very underrated and people always mess that up. And then rugs, people are like, oh, I should just do like a plain rug. Why? Do a bold rug. It's better. Because
are we talking area rug or are we talking carpet?
Area rug. Yeah, area rug. Because people are like, oh, well, the traffic. Well, if it's a busier pattern, that's kind of better because then it's easier to clean. Like stains and spills are like they blend in a little bit better. You know, you don't really have like it. And it's also on the floor. So it's not necessary. And probably the bed's going to cover a lot of it too. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, like you don't want to, you know, be too bold, then utilize a rug underneath a bed and I don't know, take a risk there. And also if you hate it, chances are you probably spent $250 and you can just replace it with something else, right? So those are like, that's like an easy thing to roll the dice on.
Speaking of lighting, it's very common at, you know, newly renovated hotels and everything. Nothing ever seems to have ceiling lights.
I know.
Is that recommended though? I'm wondering if they do it intentionally so like there isn't that direct down, like you don't notice stains as much or something. Like
I feel like too, like depending on ceiling height, people hitting their heads, pot lights are always just easy, but it adds dimension too. Like even having like hanging pendants instead of like a side table on a nightstand is always nice.
Mm-hmm. Like a pet peeve as a user for me is lamps on a switch. And when the switch is like by the bathroom and you're in bed, I end up unplugging my lamp because I'm very annoyed. So I totally agree with you. I prefer overhead and lamps. And then you choose your ambiance. Do you want the overhead light on or do you just want the lamps on? I don't know why hotels don't do it. There must be some sort of strategic, play to it, or maybe they're just older and they didn't wire for it. I don't know what it is. I personally would recommend throwing in at least some pot lights or, one flush mount light in a hotel room. I think it's just a nice option for people. And depending on the color of light too, it can add a very nice, clean, bright feel. Because hotel rooms get a lot of the time the thing of that they're like dark and dingy. A lot of times is because the lamps, they're the warmest temperature that they can possibly be, and they have huge shades, and there's two of them, and they're just like, so a way to brighten it up and stuff, I definitely think would be some nice overhead lighting.
Okay. I think on the motel, I think we're going more with wall sconces with a couple of pot lights in certain areas, but we're possibly also doing pendants instead of lamps beside the like over the nightstand.
Yeah, because then you can just put the switch to.
We would definitely recommend choosing your bed frames before you get those wired in, because you could say a king bed all day long, and we all know like that's a standard size, but maybe you end up wanting to choose a bed frame that has a bit of like a lip on the side of it, or maybe it's a little skinnier, or maybe it's, you know what I mean? So, and it's only a couple of inches, but it makes a difference when the pendants are like hanging a little bit toward on the mattress versus properly centered with the nightstand.
Are you a savvy real estate investor looking to maximize your profits? Well, if you're buying properties off the MLS, you're not making as much as you could. The most lucrative way to boost your bottom line is by acquiring investment properties off market. By buying privately off market, you're able to save tens of thousands. Now, the problem is finding off market properties is really hard and takes a lot of time, effort, and money to do. Bliss is your number one source, delivering exclusive deals that you will not find on the MLS directly to your inbox. Bliss's extensive network and insider connections gives you access to properties that are not publicly listed and at a discount. We've helped hundreds of investors across Ontario and BC source the right properties at the right time for their portfolio. Buying assignable purchase contracts through Bliss at a discount helps facilitate higher returns, lower competition, and deals that align perfectly with your investment goals. From start to finish, Bliss's world-class team of real estate professionals makes the process seamless for all investors. If you're ready to elevate your real estate investment strategy, visit us at offmarketbliss.ca to join our buyers list and start receiving exclusive off-market deals directly to your inbox. The most profitable opportunities await, and they're exclusive to you and our valued buyers list members. For your next project, check out Bliss, the go-to source for off-market deals.
An excellent tip. And funny thing is, the pendants are something I've started doing on higher end flips as well. I hang them down, beside where I expect the staging furniture to go, and we have them hanging over the nightstands. And I think it just dresses up the room again, brings it to a certain level. So there's always elements you can take from these things and use in different areas. That's why so many areas in real estate have transferable skills, right? Which is why I wasn't afraid buying a motel, because I've done so many renos and other things, and I've done Airbnbs. So, you're able to progress and move on to these other things because you have experience in one way or another. Yeah. We were talking about the color of lighting.
Yeah.
What's your favorite light color?
Depends on the room and how tall are the ceilings. What's the natural light like? What's the size of the room? What are the other finishes in there? What does the bed look like? How dark is the floor? Like, all of those things definitely add to the decision. I think leaning too cool is cold and not nice. Warm is grungy and dirty. So usually it's like a nice, like, medium is good, but that's doesn't always work, right? Depends. So if we're doing like, forest green lampshades, then like you might want to err on the side of a bit cooler and brighter to like contrast that. So I think it really there's not really a good answer for that, but I think it just depends on all of the other elements in the room, and then you can decide on your bulbs.
But to play it safe, I guess, in just a standard room, I would aim to be somewhere in the middle.
Like warm.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people do LED. Get warm daylight LED. Don't get traditional LED where it's like the coldest light. It's like blue,
Yes. Yeah. I partially asked that because I think not enough people pay attention to the color of lighting.
No, they don't. And I hate to call out men here, but I find on average men, I don't know what it is, they lean very blue in their lights. Like we always, like, when we walk into certain properties, we're like, we know a man flipped this and like didn't consult, because you can just tell. And I don't know what it is. Maybe but women, I think, tend to like a little bit more like warmth. So I think that's very important. Another tip for your listeners is like, appease women, be male neutral, because men don't really care, but women do. But men know when they don't like something. So it's like, if you kind of like aim for that too. So with lighting, I think that's like very important.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip. Yeah, design for women and appease men. That's a good way. Yeah. Because, I mean, if let's say my motel is going to be people are going as a couples retreat, it's often going to be the woman who picks it.
Yeah.
But it also can't be so far over where she'll like, oh, like he won't be comfortable here.
And doesn't want to stay there. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But as otherwise she's picking it probably.
And families, like the moms and the wives, are doing the majority of the bookings.
Absolutely. Yeah. On the lighting side, I think it is important. It's funny because when I started in real estate a long time ago, I used to do the more cool lighting in basements because it's brighter, that more white, almost bluish white, kind of in the 4,000 to 5,000 Kelvin range. And I no longer do that, but I did find it added brightness to it, but it makes it feel like a hospital.
Yes, exactly. Or like a 9 to 5 cubicle job that you hate.
And in the basement, it would make it feel more like cold down there.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. It does make it brighter, but so when you don't have enough lighting, I can kind of understand, versus, otherwise it being dark. But yeah, when you have enough lighting, I definitely understand. I mean, this is something I harp on our contractors all the time, especially nowadays. A lot of the light fixtures, like you were talking about buying on Amazon, we buy like the six packs of just basic LED round light fixtures kind of stuff. And you can often choose the color on them, like they're color changing. And so I see it way too often where I have to go and tell the contractor, change the light color. This is too white, or they don't match. The pot lights too. Pot lights, often you can change the color.
Yeah.
And I hate when I walk in a room and there's 12 pot lights and two of them are a different color. And that stands out to me. Like,
most of pet peeve as what?
Like, nope, change that one. But yeah, the color of the lights, I'm always, almost everything I'm in the 3,000 to 3,500 range for almost everything personally, except like an accent light, like sometimes over a dining table that's otherwise a well-lit area, things like that. I might go more yellow, more warm.
Yeah.
2,700 range, especially when you're doing the Edison bulbs. And
and there's a time and a place for that, right? Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, more limited and more like as an accent thing where it's not the primary light source. That's when I might use that warmer light. I imagine at night you're coming up to get a snack or something, so you might just have some pendants, and those ones can go more warm. You're not turning on the bright lights that, it's nighttime. You're getting ready for bed. Anyways, so a little bit, even as a man, I do care a lot about the lighting. I think it does make a difference.
Call them out. It's just
not
that we notice. But no, and honestly, it's funny. It's such an important conversation because everyone notices it, but they don't realize that they've noticed it. A lot of people. Some will, but majority can't put their finger on what it is that they like is off. So everyone notices it, but they don't realize. So like having your color temperatures and your lighting proper is very important.
Well, and I keep relating this back to flips because it's what I do. But I think the feel of a finished product matters so much.
Yeah.
And it's hard to tell why it feels like that. And for flips, what you often see wrong with other flippers or try to catch on ours is just little things that are wrong. That the plug cover is on crooked, or just that there's a little gaps in the backsplash in the grout lines or things like that. Those little details, and it's not any big thing, but when you start seeing several of those in a house, it gives you a bad feeling about it.
Yeah, and cheapy and
messy.
Yes, and the same thing extends to staging, to lighting, like furniture, materials. So, and obviously this extends into the Airbnbs and the boutique motels. You want to have that feel. And even if it doesn't, you might walk into a space that the elements look like they come from magazines, but it doesn't work. And I think that, would you say it's more of like good taste, or is that something someone can learn, how to make things work together?
It's hard to say because it's very, I don't know if you're saying, it's very subjective, right? Like, people there's not a design out there that 100% of people like. So that's why you have to just be confident in your design, your decisions. Why did you pick that? And then in terms of like vacation rentals and boutique hotels, I think the completion to that experience is going to be like how you operate your business. And that, like, I know is kind of not overly design related, but it's still a big factor in like hospitality in general. So I think, but I think it can be a learned skill because you also, a lot of people are designing virtually too, right? Like we do a ton of our work virtually. And even if it's like just your personal home, now you're being sent to like, a Google Drive or like you're on homedepot.com and stuff. And so learning how to like pick something and how it looks online versus how it's going to look in person is like definitely a skill, I think. Because you're not used to like how big is it going to be in real life and all that. So I think that is something that is just learned with experience and over time. And then definitely pairing things together for sure. But I think like that's always going to be subjective. So it's like there's never an end game there.
Yeah. A good tip, like sometimes I feel like if people play it too safe, it almost looks a bit boring and like, you didn't really try. So to add just to what Heather was saying, don't be afraid to like mix some colors, but like do complementing colors, right? Or even mixing patterns. Like you don't always need to necessarily use like one pattern or like, like do complementing things. And we always kind of like suggest start with one item, like a big item. So you can start with like a couch or like a bed, and then that's your kind of color scheme starting point of what you're going to start with, and then build from there. Otherwise it becomes overwhelming, and you're, you know, if you have a couple pieces that you're dead set on, you may not even end up using those pieces, because then you can just play with other things that work together more cohesively.
And for people who don't have experience doing that, that's why we mood board, and we provide all of our clients with mood boards, because it is so helpful to be able to see, because you could see a pattern over here that you love and a pattern over there that you love. But then to really like get a feel for what the room is going to look like, you do need to see it all together. And our mood boards are like very like, here's the bed, here's the rug, here's this. And so our clients are like, oh, okay, wow, you get a really good feel for like how it's going to look. That's the best thing to do ultimately.
That makes a lot of sense. I think I like those 2 tips, starting with like a main piece and making sure everything works with that. And then the mood board, so you can actually see it all together. I think that's 2 really good ways, much better than winging it.
Yeah.
You talked earlier about marketing for hospitality. Can you give us some more tips or some advice on how someone would go about marketing, you know, a specific Airbnb or a boutique hotel or motel?
Yes. What a massive beast question that was. But to start, it really does start with your design. Honestly, that is the first step to marketing a property. What does it look like? Who's going to be there? And who is going to tell somebody else about it? Because that's like, word of mouth is the best, and it's so hard to buy that, right? So that's ultimately what you want. If you have a place that looks amazing and runs well, then like the word of mouth is going to spread like wildfire. Next is like utilizing social media. So encouraging people to post. So in one of our projects recently in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we did like this crazy 5-bed Airbnb. We have like sort of a main photo spot in there with a neon sign that says from Oklahoma with love. And then there's like a big couch for groups to just kind of pile on and like take a photo. And then they have the sign in the background. What a fun way to, you know, memory, so sort of close out of a trip and like, you know, harness a memory from something like that with something, you know, of what we just described. So doing those things are definitely like step 1. And then next after that is like creating usable and like amenity spaces within the property. So in this property too, we had like a karaoke stage, a bar area, like a high top bar area with like a drink cart, a games room, a yoga room, a tree house for like kids to play in with like bunk beds. Like we really went all out on this property, but like all it was just a 5-bedroom single family home. So like we made these spaces, and anybody can do that. Well, not anybody, but people, you know, you don't have to have these like designated areas. You just have to be able to know how to utilize these spaces in these ways. And so then as soon as you're doing that, now you're totally different, because the house down the street doesn't have a tree house and a karaoke room, but yours does. And so boom, now you're different. And now the word of mouth and the social media and the videos and the photos are all coming out. And, you know, it can go beyond that. You can opt to work with brands in the area. You can opt to work with restaurants. You can create an experiences menu to have, you know, a local chef or somebody to come over, and like your guests can book a private like dinner experience at the property. So thinking outside of the box in those ways is like then the next level up of like how you can further market the property. Do you leave them, you know, wine or merch or something when they check in? What's that experience like? Are you, you know, trying to get other types of people in there, or is it just guests? When I say other types, like, you know, maybe you're marketing towards people who are looking to film a podcast and they want to utilize like one of the spots in your place. Like there's lots of, or like use it for a set for people who are like YouTubers and things like that. Like there's multiple different, and then just on that, then if you're in a podcast or on, you know, in somebody's set, then you're getting those viewers and they're like, oh, where are you? Is it like, who is that? Right. And those questions are going. So, yeah, there's so many ways to market your property, and it's really like a long conversation, but the starting point honestly is design. I'm not just saying that because that's what we do. That is like part and parcel why we do what we do, but that is like step number 1.
Yeah. To have success with your marketing, you need to have a well-designed property. And then what Heather was saying, like going down this hole of like, there's so many options and opportunities. I think understanding that it's a business in itself, the whole marketing side of that is completely like its own beast, right? You have to constantly be putting in effort either have someone do it for you if you're not going to go all in, but constantly be thinking of like ways to elevate that experience, and then also doing the marketing.
And a great example and an easy example for people to kind of wrap their heads around is like the Tesla trucks. I forget what they're called, but even like those bug cart, what are those called? Those Volkswagen Beetles, whatever.
Yeah.
Buggy, but yeah. Like we all don't even know the actual name of it, but everyone knows what that is, and it's because they look different. They're bright colors, and you could spot one on the road all day long. You can curse one when you think there's a parking spot open, and it's one of those parked in there instead. And everyone knows what that is and what that looks like. And the word of mouth is just like everyone on the planet knows what one of those cars are like. But if you say to me, I have a Hyundai Genesis, I'm like, okay, I think probably it's a basic car. Sorry if anyone has one of those, but like, you know what I'm saying? It's like you cannot immediately picture what that is. And they're a great car, and lots of people drive them, and Hyundai makes great money, I'm sure. But like, it's just less of they have to try harder to market, I think, personally. Whereas some like this Tesla truck, this Volkswagen Bug, whatever, a lot like just their, design does a lot of that marketing for them. And that's like our similar goal with like our clients' properties.
And I think taking that even further, it's you think about the old Volkswagen bus, the hippie van.
Yeah, great.
Like they'll sell for so much money.
Yeah.
Right. And because they're unique, especially, the original ones. And I think kind of what I'm getting as well from the marketing is easier when the property is better. But also I feel like you're no longer competing on price in the same way. That Hyundai is, value for price. Whereas when you're looking at something unique, price matters, but not to the same extent. It's not about just, if there's 10 Airbnbs on the same street and they all look the same, then the only way to get booked when the other ones aren't is to drop your price. So when you're different
too, yeah.
When you're different, the price is less of a factor. Someone will pay a lot more for the different place, and the other place drops their price, they may still not get booked by that person looking for something unique.
Yeah, exactly.
And doing the design up front will actually save you money in the long run. Like if you just do it properly right off the hop.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of we got asked a lot too, like, what are your tips for making it through slow season? Well, if your design is right from the get-go, then your occupancy matters less, because in your good season, if you're in the top 1% and charging amazing rates, then like it doesn't almost matter in your off season if you have the same occupancy as everybody else, because when you are booked, you're top of the pile. And so then you're not as stressed about those kinds of things. So like it really is a long-term, people, like you said earlier, sometimes they get scared to pay for design, and, be that as it may, but like if you're in, this business for the long term, then it's the design up front is like a blip on your radar, because you're going to get that back tenfold in all these different ways that we've talked about. And also too, a lot of investors are doing construction loans, or they're raising the money. So it's like at that point, really doesn't matter.
Yeah, for sure. So let's move on to this segment of our show where we talk about our favorite and least favorite deals. Do you have a favorite property that you guys have done the design on in mind?
Yes.
All right. So tell me about this property and what you guys did.
Okay, so we, I think it's like the Tulsa property that we just talked about. We do have a lot of fun properties that we've done, but this one was really amazing because we were kind of given carte blanche to do like whatever we wanted. And it was the kind of property that it made sense to do that. And it was also very large. The exterior was like perfect. Like it was just like that all in property and the client understood that. Like they were very, we get it. We need this. We want to be top 1%. And so everyone was just aligned. And it was really amazing. So we just went all out. We created all those different spaces like we talked about, wellness room, karaoke music room, bar, hangout area, games room, treehouse, like hangout for the little kids, like all of those different exterior, mini putt, all of that stuff outside. Just to add to, like, all of those rooms had like an element that was like fun for everybody too. So like in this wellness room, there was like hanging chairs where you could go and read a book with like a fun neon sign. So maybe it's a photo op wall. We did yoga mats. Like, so
having that whole experience in that one room is really cool because it's unique to everybody who's going to visit the property. They may do something different in there. There was also like things that like we've never seen in Airbnbs before. Like there was like a little waterfall feature as well. So like if you actually do want to meditate or like do yoga, that's really cool as like an option. The karaoke, they had like this cool like LED that like connects to the music like stage. So you are literally feeling like you're in this like spot where it's not your Airbnb, it's a photo moment. You're going to post about it in Tulsa, Oklahoma as well. There's this like well-known thing where you stand in the center and it's like the center of the universe. So we brought that aspect to the property by doing our research and then also made that like a fun experience for guests. So like it doesn't just end at like it's a karaoke room, right? Like how many Airbnbs, yes, have a karaoke room? We made it like a moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the main tourist attraction in Tulsa is like the center of the universe. So, but yeah, so that was definitely like a highlight so far of one of our projects. And then honestly, we haven't had very many like deals that we hated. Like everybody gets them, but like we've been pretty lucky where we haven't really like hated, too many things. But I think just overall, when we get kind of like a midterm basement, like rental kind of thing where we're more handcuffed, those aren't our most exciting deals to design. We will still do them. It's not necessarily our bread and butter. But some people still realize that the design is necessary for something like that. But yeah, no, those are just less fun, to be blunt, and yeah, they're just.
I'll just add that's maybe your least interesting one. I think another one which you probably would agree with me is like a design. Like we said, we do a lot of virtual, but we also do hands-on. I think on our virtual side, having the client maybe not entirely doing the design. So whether that be a budget or like, they want to swap out certain items, I think that is one of our things that like we try to preach to our clients to be like to have full like ROI on investing in design, like complete this design within its entirety. And we've had, like a couple people kick the tires. They don't buy everything like right up front, or maybe they say we'll do it in stages. Whether it be what it is, I think it just doesn't show the full design like when they get photos done.
And it's kind of a waste for them because or we've had people too at the end, they look at it and they're like, oh, I ended up getting this, but I changed the color. Well, don't do that because it was intended to be this color and now the whole thing is off kind of thing, right? Like they might think that it looks fine, but then like you hired anyway. So it's all the story and the complete package together. So it's like, just, do the whole thing. And I would agree with you. That's like, our hearts are just like,
I totally get that, but I always get the client. I've done kind of something similar where it's like, I love your design. Now let me try to source maybe like secondhand versions of it that are like close enough and things like that. It doesn't come out the same. Depending on the project, it can, maybe be worth it and sometimes not. It depends what you're looking for as a finished product and what you're using it for sure.
And then the other like a good tip just to add on to that is just also continue the investment and invest in good photography. Like you've done the design, but how are you going to advertise and showcase that if you are doing a flip, right? Like you're going to put it on the MLS, or if you are doing Airbnb, your photos need to show that that's like the first instinct as to why someone's interested. So follow through and do good photography as well.
Great tip. I completely agree with that. It sounds like your favorite and least favorite deals or designs come down a little bit to how much you guys have in freedom and flexibility to make your designs come to life. So you enjoyed it the most when you had carte blanche. You can design beautiful spaces and have your vision come to life. And you like it the least when either you are handcuffed a little bit by the space, there's limitations, it's a basement, etc., or the person doesn't completely bring your vision to life when it's a virtual design. So I can see that. You guys have your vision and you want to see it come together, and that's when you have the ability to do that, it's what you enjoy the most. So that makes sense. I like it.
Yeah. Within reason, like we obviously our end goal is to have top producing properties for our clients. So we try to like preach and, give them the resources that they need. And
when we say carte blanche, we don't mean with budget, because we're always very, very, very conscious of budget. We just mean like freedom for decision. And exactly, yeah, like we're here because we're trying to do these, not because, we want to see our, like, yes, part of it, but also like trust that your guests want this too. That's ultimately why we want to do what we're doing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's a reason you guys come up with the designs you do. So you want to see it completed the way we designed it, right? So
yeah,
I understand that. And it's probably...
Yeah, every client's different too. Like we've had clients to be like, please girls, like this is all on you. This is why I want to hire you. But then we also have clients who want to be heavily involved. So we have to find that like middle ground, and like that's something that it's like a continuous. There's no one answer because everybody has a different like expectation. So we are working like really hard with clients to like figure out that expectations right from the jump. Like even our property right now, like we're sending them options, you know what I mean? So there's kind of a line of communication and just understanding how involved do people really want to be.
Yeah, it's something I've had difficulty with because I've flipped a lot of houses and I've done most of the design myself. So I'd like to think I'm pretty good at design, and so I have trouble letting go of that fully to other people. So something I'm working on. But I definitely think if someone doesn't have the best eye for design, they shouldn't be challenging what you guys bring. I mean, you guys clearly have great taste. So let's move on to the final segment of our show, our wrap-up questions, which I will modify a little bit for you guys. What's changed about your approach to design with your experience?
I think our systems are the number one thing that have changed, just like how we operate, how we do things. Like, we're always investors first at the end of the day. So like efficiency is everything, right? It's not someone's personal home where they have, endless time to like sit around and pick colors. Like we're getting clients that are like, hi, I'm under contract on this place and we want to get this listed and up and guests, and checking in 6 weeks. Like we're moving on really fast timelines, and tight budgets and efficiency is everything. So we really pride ourselves on our communication, our very like airtight systems. Our team is of the exact same mindset, and we all have like really amazing, communication internally and also with our clients as well. And that's probably the number one thing that has like very much grown and evolved with us since we've started, and continues to improve. And that's something that makes us definitely unique, because I was saying earlier, design taste is subjective, but when you're an investor and, time is money and you have X amount of dollars, X amount of weeks to like get something up and moving, you need people that are going to move fast and move with you. And that's us.
Awesome. Last question. If you could go back in time, what's one piece of advice you'd have for a younger you?
Are we talking just in like life, or
however you want to take it? Yeah.
Well, I mean, millions of things. I would say to myself, like everything truly works out. It really, really does. I know that now, but like even as a teenager and stuff, like people will tell you that, you're like, does it? But it really does. Like when you finally are able to see things like full circle, and sometimes it takes 10 years to like complete a circle. It really, really does work out in your benefit all the time. So I would just remind myself of that, I think.
And Erin, any advice for a younger you?
You? I think like probably one for me, just as I've gotten older, is just to remember to like prioritize yourself as well. And that's just like focusing and like leaning on things that make you feel good. So I know like we're all like go, work, but just taking those moments to spend time on and with who you enjoy.
Awesome.
Little.
So Erin and Heather, Pinkwall Designs, at Pink Wall Designs on Instagram. Is that the best place? Where can people find out more about you? And, where could they reach out to you guys if they, want to have a consultation and discuss design with you guys?
Yeah, Instagram is probably the easiest for everybody. If not, our website is pinkwalldesigns.inc.com. And then that's also like where you can book a consultation. Like there's tons of information on there. So that's also a spot. But yeah, Instagram's probably the easiest.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you both for coming on. I really enjoyed this, and I hope our listeners did too.
Thank you for having us.